It's All Her, the podcast. I'm your host, Geordie Lucas. I'm the founder and editor of itsallher.com. I'm a presenter, an actress in a former life, and a mum to a toddler. I've got a lot going on and I have a passion for helping women live simpler, better lives. Father's Day is this Sunday, the 5th of September in Australia. So on the site this week, we've put together a gift guide that has a present for every kind of dad. Now, this week's guest is Colleen Callander, and she was the CEO of Sportsgirl for 13 years. I was really interested in speaking to her for a few reasons, mainly because she managed to become an award-winning CEO despite not finishing high school and having a few kids along the way. Us women have to work twice as hard, not only for just a seat at the table, but in leadership teams. We also have to make up for the time we lose when we have children. Now, I lost a lot of work motivation when I had my daughter Evie. It was really hard for me to be inspired and motivated to sort of get back into work. And even now, I'm still not as motivated as I once was. And so I love talking to women that have been able to return to work with that same level of drive to succeed after having children. You know, speaking from my own personal experience, which is unique because I work for myself and I've never been driven to climb a corporate ladder, but I certainly don't have as much drive and determination in my field as I used to. And that's not because I don't want to succeed. I do. It's because there is simply not enough room in my brain. I find motherhood all-consuming, or at least I have for these last 2 years, and it may change down the track, but I just don't have it in me to give the 1,000% I do to Evie and being a mum, and then give another 1,000% to my career. You know, obviously I have hopes and dreams for my work, and I would love to have some employees at some stage, but that's about as far as I'm letting my mind wander to. So yeah, I'm always amazed and fascinated when I come across women who return to work after having babies and make it to the top. I think it's just incredible. I'd be really interested to hear how motherhood changed your relationship with your career. If you were like me and it really made you reevaluate how important work actually is to you, or if you were able to return with the same level of drive and motivation or even more. Obviously, Colleen did not have the issues that I have. Here is my chat with Colleen Callander. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast this week. I'm very excited to hear all about your life and career. You were the CEO of Sportsgirl and Suzanne. You walked away and you've had this year off in amongst COVID. How has that been for you, sort of rediscovering yourself and your passions?
Yes, well, thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful to be here with you. And yeah, let's start there. And it kind of hasn't been a year off. That's what I planned. And I was super excited about that when I finished in my role in March 2020. And as you know, I had 20 years with the Sportsgirl Suzanne Group, 13 of those years as CEO, 6 across Suzanne, and then the past 7 at Sportsgirl. And I had decided at my 20-year milestone, and it was coinciding with me, turning 50, that I was going to have some time out and do some of my passion projects. And of course, I took that time off and I was going to do some travel and all of those wonderful things. And then COVID hit. So the world changed for everyone, including me. So I really have absolutely loved the last year, but it certainly hasn't been a year off. It's been one where I've filled that plate very very much the way I sort of live my life, is just keep putting more and more on that plate until some things fall off. But it's been a really fabulous year of really enjoying a lot of my passion projects and writing my book, as you know.
Yeah. And you have had this incredibly successful career. Can you tell us a bit about your childhood and perhaps some of the goals that you had as a young woman in your formative years?
Yeah, it's a great question. My look, my childhood, people think, oh, did you aspire to be a CEO? No, I didn't aspire to be a CEO at all. In fact, I used to come home on a weekly basis and change my career path. I'd say to my parents, one week I'm going to be a vet, the next week I'm a hairdresser, the next week, I want to be a lawyer. And, as a lot of, I think, young, sort of adolescents do, we chop and change. But when I started that, part-time job or casual job, I should say, at Just Jeans at the end of year 11, I absolutely loved retail. But I had this wonderful upbringing. I was, brought up in Geelong, and I lived there for most of my life. And I had these, I tell the story in my book about my two incredible parents. And, for me, everything started in the home. And, success for me started in the home. And I credit my parents, for the woman and leader I am today. And I had this incredible father who was Italian immigrant, and he came out to Australia at the age of 4 and didn't speak the language, and they had not much money, and pretty much came out with the clothes they wore. And like a lot of people at that time, in search of, a new life. And so he was this really hard-working man, and he finished school at the age of 14. So he didn't have the opportunity to have that education that he wanted to give myself and my siblings. But he was this real workhorse. And he really taught me the value of hard work and money and really being committed to your craft. And so he was incredible. And then I had my mum, who was just this beautiful nurturer, and she was one of 12 children. And she had an alcoholic father, and she actually lost her own mother when she was just 20 years of age herself. And she had myself and my brother just as little babies. So she became this incredible nurturer, not of just her own children, but her siblings. So I feel very blessed, Geordie, that I've got these, what I believe, real attributes and DNA from two very different people, but both have served me very well in the way sort of I've lived my life.
Yeah. And I know that you didn't actually finish school. Can you tell me a bit about the decision for you to leave? When did you leave, and what was your plan?
Yeah, well, I didn't have a plan at that point when I did when I decided to leave, but I never planned to leave school. I had always been very fortunate to work in the family businesses, and, I love to work from a very young age, as young as I can remember. So I worked in my parents' canteen, and I worked in their hotels, and I used to go to work with my dad on the work sites when I was a young girl. So I always had this real drive and ambition to work. And then I got offered a casual job at the end of year 11 when for the summer break. And, you know what it's like at the end of a school year. You're so excited because you've got fun and sun and boys and holidays. Yeah. And I was excited because I'd got this job. And for me, it was in the fashion industry, the local Just Jeans store. And so I started there, and I worked every single shift I could. In fact, that was like every day because I loved it so much. Yeah. And then at the end of that summer break, the area manager came and said to me, "Cole, do you want to stay on? We think you've got potential." And what 16-year-old girl wouldn't be excited about hearing those words? So I then had the job of breaking the news to my parents that here I was, 16 years of age, hadn't finished school, no school qualifications, and telling them that I was going to go and work on a shop floor and sell jeans because I was passionate about fashion and retail. And so we had some conversation about that. And, true to form, they said to me, my father, I remember this moment, like it was yesterday, saying, "Work hard, never give up, be passionate, and love what you do." And they're the words that have stuck with me throughout my entire life in everything I've, sort of applied myself to.
So when did you start out then at Sportsgirl and Suzanne, and what part of the business did you enter into?
Yeah. I'll step back a tiny bit. So when I was at Just Jeans, I had nearly 9 years there, and I was the youngest store manager. I was then the youngest area manager at the age of 20. I was then promoted to Victorian State Manager at the age of 24, running 50 stores and 3 direct reports. So I moved up the ladder very quickly in the Just Jeans business then. And then I got this call from Sportsgirl in 1999 asking me to join their business. And of course, again, who wouldn't be excited about getting a call like that? This fabulous, iconic brand. And so I joined the Sportsgirl business in 1999. and again, continued work through the ranks up to general manager. And then I hit burnout, which we'll probably talk a bit about today as well.
Yes.
And I then moved into the role of CEO at Suzanne and then CEO at Sportsgirl. So that call was one that, changed my life and went in a different direction. But, 20 years of just, fabulous time in that organization.
You just touched on your burnout. Was that when you were the CEO?
It was actually before I became the CEO. So I write about burnout in my book because it's something I really want women to take on board and give them the tools and tips to actually not get on that train to burnout. And if they are on that burnout train, how to get off it. But I was 36 years of age and I was general manager at Sportsgirl at the time. And I'd just been going and going and going. And in my book, I described myself as a red Ferrari. I had 3 young children, 2, 9 and 10. I didn't have an off button. I was just this red Ferrari that went faster and faster and faster and wanted to win every race. And I'd never stopped. I'd never pulled into the pits. I'd never put air in my tires. I'd never given myself a service, and I hit a wall. And I remember that day walking through the door and saying to my husband, I'm done. And they were my words. And I'm very black and white in that way. I said to him, I'm done. I can't do it anymore. And it wasn't that I didn't love my job, because I absolutely love my job. It was because I had nothing left in the tank. And so I went in the next day to resign. And, as I said those words, it was like these big sandbags were taken off my shoulders.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I was told, we don't want you to leave. You're too valuable. We want you to stay. So instead, I took 3.5, nearly 4 months off. And I went to my happy place, which is Sorrento. And I completely gave that red Ferrari an overhaul.
Yeah.
And I changed the way I lived my life. I had to set boundaries. I got myself a coach. I had to build in some self-care. I had to do a whole lot of changes in my life so that I could live this life of longevity and fulfillment with all of those things. So I then returned as CEO of Suzanne, and that's there where I spent the next 13 years as a CEO, living a life without burnout. And so that's really important. And as I said, it's one of the messages I want to get across to women and really give them the support so that they don't get on that train to burnout.
So what were some of the signs and symptoms that you were heading towards a burnout?
Yeah, it's a great question, Jodie, because a lot of people think burnout is I can't get out of bed.
Yeah.
That is not burnout. Of course, that is when you get right at the end of end of that train station. But they're not the signs. That's where we end up. So the signs of burnout are I'm exhausted all the time, or I just have this constant lack of energy, or you might have constant fatigue. You potentially could even have a sleep disorder, or it could just be you've got this concentration and memory problems, or you can't make decisions. There are so many different signs to burnout, and we need to recognize those, and then we need to add, change, or delete something in our lives to actually get ourselves back on track.
Yeah. So then stepping into that role as CEO, how did you as a leader encourage your workers and peers to really take care of themselves in and out of the office?
Yeah, it's a great one. I mean, I was very fortunate in the Sportsgirl and Suzanne business that I worked with a lot of women. Being at the helm of those businesses, they were my rules. And I loved writing those rules because those rules were all around people. Yeah. And those rules were all around allowing people to come to work and be their best selves. So, I was very aware of what those signs look like. So, for me, it was always about finding that balance and really encouraging others around me to find that balance. I'm not a fan of work-life balance. I don't believe in that. I believe in life in balance. And I think that we can have this beautiful life circle and we can fit all of the things that we need to fit in there and live this life in balance. And that means something different to everyone. I talk about in my book, and this came after burnout, was that I have this life imbalance, which is 80-20. So 80% of my life has to be in balance, and the other 20% can be chaotic and out of balance. And I like that because that brings excitement and new ideas and resilience and new thinking and a bit of chaos, which we need in our lives. But when that 80% starts to, the scales start to tip too much, I know the signs of what that is. So again, we add, change, or delete something so that we can get that scale back in balance. And I work with a lot of women on just getting those scales in balance, whatever that balance looks like for you. You might say, Geordie, I want my life 50% balance and 50 chaos, and that works for me. And that's fabulous if it works for you. Just find what that balance is that works for you.
Yeah. There's no magical formula, is there? Everyone is so different and what works for them. And some people really need more structure, but I need a bit of chaos as well. And I need some, I can't have every day being the same. That would drive me insane.
That wouldn't be very exciting. That would be boring. So, it's finding what that looks like and really sort of starting to build your life around that.
So you were the CEO for 13 years. Why did you walk away?
Yeah, it's a great one. And I've had that question asked a lot to me, but I've been in retail for 30 years. It's a long time. And 20 years in one organization, which was the Suzanne Sportsgirl group. And, it's quite funny. You get to 10 years somewhere and you're like, wow, I've been here for 10 years. Or what am I doing? Then next thing you know, you're at 15 years. And before you know it, you're at 20 years. And that's literally how fast those 20 years went. And as I said, they were incredible 20 years. But for me, it was time to write my next chapter. And as I said, my 20 year was sort of coinciding with me turning 50. And I very much look at my life in decades. What happens in my 20s, my 30s, my 40s, my 50s, and now what do I want my next decade to look like?
Yeah.
And so for me, it was really about what do I want that next decade to look like? And so, as I said, it was about taking a year off, doing my passion projects, writing my book. I sit on a couple of boards. And then I was, okay, and then I might get back into a CEO role in a year's time. But, I'm actually having a bit too much fun right now to sort of think about that. And my plate, as I said, is so full with so many amazing things happening and so many new doors opening that, who knows what that looks like. I keep saying, I'm just writing one chapter at a time.
Yeah. Before we hear more about your book and everything, I'm really interested to hear your thoughts. Obviously, pre-COVID, the rise of online shopping and e-commerce really changed the landscape of retail. Now we've got COVID, which has obviously made things even harder. What do you think the future of retail is?
Yeah, look, it's a fantastic question, and one that I think a lot of people are asking themselves right now. I would say life has changed forever. We are not going back to those old days of retail, but I also think that there's a lot of positive things that have come out and will continue to come out of some of these changes. And I always say, Geordie, the great leaders and the great brands will rise to the top when times are tough. And the ones that are not so great and haven't built solid foundations and haven't built great people around them and haven't built brands that are robust and haven't invested in their brands are the ones that are going to fall to the wayside. And I think that is exactly what's going to happen. Those great leaders are going to become greater because they have put people first. And they have been investing in their business for a long time. There's no point when COVID hits for leaders to say, oh, let's start to think about our people or let's invest in our brand. It's actually going to be all a bit too late by then. So I really believe those brands that have done that and the leaders that have done that and the ones that have really differentiated themselves from the market, the ones that have really put their customers at the heart of everything they have always done are the ones that will not only survive through these times, but I think they will actually thrive.
And I think it's also just about creating that experience and making that in-store experience more special for a customer, because for me there's nothing quite like going into a store and being in the store as opposed to ordering things online and trying them on at home. There's a real experience that comes with shopping.
Yes. Absolutely. And I think, 10, 15 years ago, everyone was panicked about let's close down all the stores because no one's going to go to stores anymore. Everyone's going to shop online. And that was absolute rubbish then. And it's still rubbish now.
Yeah.
People want to feel connected. People want to feel connected to brands, but they only want to feel connected to brands if they really believe in them and if they really trust them. And I'm like you, I do a bit of online shopping, but there's nothing like going into a store and having an in-store experience, as long as that's a great experience. So again, the brands and leaders and CEOs that have invested in that in-store experience, which also comes from the people, are the ones that are really going to sort of forge ahead.
So let's talk about your book. It's called Leader by Design. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, so Leader by Design, it's a little bit double-edged sword, really, because obviously I have been in the fashion industry, in the design world for most of my life, or particularly all of my working life, which has been 30 years. And I've also become a leader by design. So the purpose of my book, it's a little bit twofold. So it's part autobiography. So it shares my life journey from finishing school at 16 to CEO and everything in between, including, the woman I am today and how that shaped me, and burnout and all of those things.
Yeah.
But my goal is really to inspire women to step up, to have a voice, to live with purpose, and to really believe in themselves and start living this life of real confidence. And I also want them to embrace their superpower. And there's a whole section in my book that talks about that. The second part of my book is that I really want organizations to aspire to living in this new world I keep talking about, and one where we embrace kindness and compassion and trust and authenticity, and one where we put people at the heart of everything we do, and also one that encourages more women at the helm, by the way. The book is packed with tips and tools and insights for women and leaders of all generations. It actually doesn't matter where you are in your life or career journey. So I really want to inspire and empower people to really start living this best life that they deserve through leading in their own lives, whether that be in business or in life.
Yeah. And you touch on more women at the helm. Do you believe in quotas when it comes to women in leadership, or are you more of a merits-based?
Yeah, look, it's a really great question, and one that sort of gets asked quite a bit, and there's a lot of talk about it. And I have to say, it's probably not something that I would say is really totally important if we're talking about, is it quota? Do we have to have exactly the right number on each side? For me, I think, and I really believe that it's right people for the right jobs, right skill set, whether that be hard or soft skills. And, there are certain industries and jobs that might be better for men. There might be certain industries and jobs that are better for women. So it's not so much about the quota, but one thing I am very passionate about is that organizations and people creating pathways for women and creating opportunities for women to grow, and allowing flexibility and having equality in the workplace, and building programs for women that allow growth and support building confidence. So it's not so much the quota, but I do believe that we do need more women at the helm, because right now the balance is skewed. And, when I talk about this, I say we don't need more men or more women. We just need a nice balance of both, because they bring very different skills to the table.
Yeah. I think something that sets a lot of women back when it comes to that sort of upwards trajectory is when they have children. How did you sort of keep going forward and pushing forward and climbing to the top after you had each of your children?
Yes, yeah. It's a great one. I was very, very fortunate. One, I worked super hard. I've been this workaholic my whole life, and something I have to manage very closely. But for me, I was really lucky that I had people around me to love and support me. And I would say that's a really big part of being successful as a female today, is to surround yourself with your cheer squad. And that could be your husband, that could be a partner, that could be a nanny, that could be a friend, it doesn't matter who it is, but surround yourself with people that are going to be there to support you and to pick you up when you fall over, because we are going to fall over. That is just what's going to happen. We put so much on our plate, and generally women are people pleasers. So we say yes to everything until we can't say yes anymore. So really surround yourself with, with people that really love and really are going to support you and want to see you get to where you're heading.
Can you tell me a bit more about your mentoring program?
Yeah. Mentor Me, it's a funny one because it actually was a bit of a gift out of COVID. It was not, it wasn't really part of that, 12-month off at all. But when it hit, I started getting all of these calls from these amazing, beautiful women, some that had worked for me in, recently, some that had worked for me in the past, and lots of women that I'd never met before. And everyone was really struggling with this new world we were entering into. And it was, I'm working from home, I don't like my job, I don't like my husband, I don't like, all of these things that were probably there beforehand rose to the surface. So mentor and sorry, for me, I had a coach. I've had a life coach for a big part of my life, and that was came out of burnout. So I know the value of having a coach and great mentors and role models around me. And that's what I've also tried to do for so many in my working world. So Mentor Me really became this gift where I wanted to make mentoring affordable and accessible for all women.
Yeah.
So what it is, it's a 4-week or 4-hour mentoring program via Zoom. Every week we focus on something different. So week 1 is the power of values and purpose. Week 2 is self and leadership. Week 3 is the power of real confidence. And week 4 is the power of self, which covers balance, boundaries, and goals. So every chapter starts with the power of, which is the way my book is written. And it's just been phenomenal. And it just keeps going from strength to strength. And in fact, now I've taken it into organizations. So I've got it into some big and small organizations, and I run the 4-hour program across multiple weeks there. And it's not only with women. So I do have a women specific program, but I also just have Mentor Me. So there are a lot of men doing my program in organizations as well, which is fantastic.
What's your advice for women wanting to reach the top of their chosen industry?
Oh, wow. I could write a book just on that. What do we need to do? But, look, outside of working hard and being committed and having strong values and purpose and, maybe sacrificing some things along the way, I would say the number one thing would be believe in yourself. Have a go, dream big. It takes as much energy to dream small as it does to dream big. There are going to be people around us that are going to tell us that our goals are too big and our dreams are too big, whether that be, our friends or family or a teacher or an employer. They are going to say, it's too ambitious, you're crazy, someone's done it before, or it can't be done. And I want to say to women, don't listen to them. Go for it. Believe in yourself. Women are changing this world every single day with people around them telling they can't do it or it can't be done. So that's my advice. Believe in yourself and have a go. What is the worst thing that can happen?
So our values at It's All Her is making life simpler and better for women. How do you make your life simpler and better for yourself?
Yeah, I think one of the things I always focus on is my values. I'm very strong on my values, whether that are my personal values or when I've been a CEO, the values that, reside in my company, because our values are our inner compass. It helps us make all of the decisions that we need to make. So I stay very true to my values, which often keeps things, pretty simple. The other thing I would say, there's a couple of things. I'd say I try and live a life of control the controllables. It can sometimes be hard to do. We can get very caught up and spend a lot of time worried and focused on things that are not in our control. So I talk about calm, confident control, and that's the way I try and live my life as well. And I think the other big one, Geordie, is that I really try and live a life of gratitude. People, we often can spend too much time and so much time thinking about the things we need or don't have or would like in our lives or are missing, instead of actually looking at what's right in front of us and what we have. And so, I get up very grateful every day. I walk to the beach every single morning, no matter what the weather looks like. I'm very lucky and grateful I live 2-minute walk from the beach. So, every day I walk that beach and I say, how lucky am I? Like, life's pretty damn good.
That's beautiful. Colleen, thank you so much for sharing with us this week. I will leave all of the links to your book and your program in the show notes. I can't wait to see what you get up to next.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. And it was really, really nice to be on your show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of It's All Her, the podcast. If you have loved this episode, please rate, review, and subscribe. Share it with a friend, and I'll be back in your ears next week.